you have a very, very unique positioning. And could you describe your brand identity for us?
It became very clear fast that beauty is at the core of the brand. So with everything we do, we ask ourselves, is this beautiful?
Yeah.
Is this giving beauty to our customers? And beauty is much more than a piece of design or a piece of furniture, right? Beauty is kindness, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, and all of this is interconnected.
80% of your buyers are repeat customers. And to me, that's very impressive.
Content that we produce that's beautiful on that one hand, and on the other hand, authentic and telling real stories, showing real homes. That's really what differentiates us.
Working with creators and influencers, do you have top do's and don'ts for us?
I can count on one hand and all the time the creators we've worked with that we only booked because they were big names on one hand, and we work with creators on a daily basis because we love to work with people that love our brand and that can authentically talk about our brand.
Absolutely. Welcome to the EGN Podcast, powered by the E-commerce Berlin Expo. I'm your host, Efe von Thenen, and today I'm joined by Lydia Kind, VP Creative and Communications at Westwing, an e-commerce giant that promotes beautiful living. Founded in 2011, Westwing has grown into a premium destination for design lovers, serving 12 countries in Europe and delivering almost 3 million orders in 2023 alone. What's even more impressive is that 80% of these orders come from loyal, repeat customers. So Westwing isn't just any e-commerce company, it's a true love brand that creates an emotional connection with its customers. Today we will explore what makes Westwing a standout brand in the competitive space, how they foster such a strong customer retention, and what's next for the brand as it continues to inspire. If you're passionate about branding, curious about building bonds with customers, or interested in how to cooperate with creators and influencers to elevate your brand, this episode is for you. Ludia, welcome to the show. Welcome to Berlin. You came from Berlin Mitte today, but you came from Munich, actually, where you're based. Nice to have you as part of our show. And actually, I've been really looking forward to this episode a little bit more than the others, but it's mostly because I love hearing stories about brand building and maintaining such a strong brand, and to hear it from someone that is doing it with one of the top love brands in Europe. It's very humbling and exciting for me. Yeah, please introduce yourself.
So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this really nice introduction. That's a good start into a conversation. I'm Lydia. I'm with Westwing since a little bit less than 2 years, and I'm responsible for the areas of brand, communications, creative, and influencer marketing. Yeah. And when I started, the brand had grown very organically since 11 years into a loved brand. So in order to scale, it was important to really build a foundation and a strategic foundation of this brand to further build on it. So to from this strategic foundation, create a vision, a brand vision, and a creative vision. So this is what we've been doing in the last couple of years. And originally, my roots there in design and photography. So this is how I started into the business. Wow. So not a classic, let's say, BWL business background. Yeah. And then actually I've been working in fashion for more than 20 years now. So after my studies, I did a classic fashion journalism and worked as a fashion journalist. And then I moved to Diesel back in the early 2000s, which was an amazing time to work at Diesel, because it was the time when Renzo Rosso, the founder, decided to build brand again and really invested into brand. And that's where I got my deeply rooted love for brand, because I just understand that it makes such a huge difference for the workforce, so for the people working for the brand, but also for the outside. And this is very closely connected because...
An extremely powerful brand too.
Yes. So I did that for actually 8 years working at Diesel. And
long
really,
time.
Yes, and it was really the great times there. And then I moved to an agency to do more of consulting in creative and brand strategy, also for mainly clients from the fashion industry, reaching from bigger fashion brands to smaller fashion brands, and also beauty. And then I moved back on client side and joined Zalando, where I worked in different positions in 7 years. And at the end of my career there, I led the global creative direction.
Wow.
And that was also, I mean, I was again super, super lucky to be in an organization like Zalando in a time where there was so much change and there were so many interesting tasks for the brand. So very different to what I do at Westwing right now. Zalando had the problem that everybody knew it. Like, I mean, hands down, almost everybody knew Zalando, but it was perceived as the faceless giant and really missing brand perception, missing brand love.
Also an interesting task at hand, no?
Yes, a super interesting task, because you can really think about a story, the stories you want to tell, and build these stories. So, so this is what I did there. And then I moved to Westwing.
Okay. One thing I'm asking in every podcast episode about these leadership stories and like personal growth stories is because I think it really shapes how you approach your current job, right? So all these experiences you've had, and for me, like the experience at Zalando, Diesel, the agency side, it completes the picture from different directions. Super interesting. So let's move to Westwing. And you've been there, I think, for 2 years. How has it been? And first of all, how did you come up with the idea of working at Westwing? How did you find out about them, or were you a customer yourself?
Yes, of course, I've been a customer. And I think it's probably, I have a deeply rooted love for creativity. And I have a deeply rooted love for brand and brand storytelling. And when I was approached by Westwing, I was immediately interested, because this brand, and it was very clear that within this, startup scene, this was different. There was something there. It's not like invented by people thinking about something that they can sell in a couple of years, but it is really, there is a story behind it, and that I loved very much. And additionally, I've always had this big fascination for home and living, for furniture and for product design. I just find it super interesting how a product, a chair, a table, a carpet can change the mood in a room. An example, if we were sitting, let's say, on a wooden stool here, probably our conversation would be different. And just now you told me about the studio that you had before, and that you moved into this one because it's more intimate, and that you felt that the conversations you have are different. And isn't that fascinating? That's the room, that's the furniture, that's the light. And
what do you think of our studio? We have a carpet, as you described.
You have a carpet, you have chairs. I assume they're not from Westwing, but they're very comfortable.
I don't know, to be honest.
Sometimes chairs, I'm sure.
I mean,
sometimes chairs just have to be comfortable. So I think that's very, very interesting and very fascinating. So, and I also had the feeling that I mean, I got a little bored of fashion, I have to say. Things were like repeating over and over again after 20 years. What a surprise. Although the industry and everything had changed so much, but still, I always had the feeling that, or have the feeling that home and living and fashion are like two sides of one coin. And where the stories you tell with fashion end, it starts with home and living. So that's what I really love, like the story of this chair, who is sat here, what has been what has been experienced with it. I think that's just super interesting.
It's fascinating to me because where you're sitting, we have sometimes data experts telling a completely different story, and like your creative approach is like radiating already. And I'm super excited to get to the brand of Westwing. So maybe you can describe, because I mean, Living Beautiful is a campaign that, as far as I know, has been going on for a while, and you have a very, very unique positioning. And could you describe your brand identity for us?
So, as you said, Live Beautiful is our campaign. Was the rollout of our new CI. So, as I said before, this brand has been growing very organically, and when I came, we built the strategic foundation, and it became very clear fast that beauty is at the core of the brand. So with everything we do, we ask ourselves, is this beautiful?
Yeah.
Is this giving beauty to our customers? Has this any add-on for them that only we can offer? And beauty is much more than a piece of design or a piece of furniture, right? Beauty is kindness, being kind to yourself, being kind to others, and all of this is interconnected. So this is really very, very strongly at the core of what we're doing within our daily business and within everything we do consumer facing, I would say.
Yeah. One thing that you said is also beautiful design. I think one thing that really strikes me about Westwing is this religious approach about beautiful design, almost like Apple, at least back in the days, like with this obsessive focus. You maybe moving beyond that, what other elements that you think are really different than all the other companies you've seen and worked at?
Yeah. So content, I would really say it's our content. So content is at the core of everything we do. And it's not about creating content for the sake of creating content, because there's so many channels and you need to create content to tell the story. But it's really at our core. Looking back to why Delia in the first place founded Westwing in 2011, that's why. That's because she was looking for furniture online and she was not able to find inspirational content that is on the one hand beautiful and on the other hand lets you shop.
Yeah.
So this is really at the core of everything we do. So the content that's not just beautiful. So that's what I said before. It needs to be beautiful. That's like the check we always need to make, aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. It is also very, very authentic. And everybody, like, I'm deeply convinced that customers, they get if it's authentic or not. So the authentic content that we produce, that's beautiful on that one hand, and on the other hand authentic and telling real stories, showing real homes, that's really what differentiates us. And if you look into the industry, it is, I have to say, quite dusty, right? So besides IKEA, who are obviously doing an amazing job for brand storytelling, that everything is very not very forward thinking. So there's no diversity, there's no inclusion, there's no brand storytelling. Tell me one home and living brand in the premium segment that tells interesting stories, that does more than just showcasing a product in a very luxurious way, in a very old school way, I have to say. So this is something that really sets us apart, and that is, I would say, quite a unique thing to do within our area.
one thing you said, premium, right, is also something that differentiates you guys. Could you describe a little bit your audience and target group and of buyers that prefer these premium goods, have attention for detail and beautiful design?
Yeah.
But maybe you can describe it a little bit more for us.
So our audience, I would say the design lovers. So people who are really interested in elevating their life through beautiful design, through beautiful furniture, who are living a life surrounded by beautiful things, and who also have like expectations on quality, on sustainability, on design, and are probably also influenced from fashion brands, from the aesthetics that come from fashion brands. Our audience are not the ones going to others of our competitors and just, trying to find something practical to sit on. It's fair to be like that, but it's not what you look for when you go to Westwing.
Could you drill down, like, in terms of demographics? Do you have like a certain age group that you would say is typical, or I'm pretty sure you have that, but could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I'm sure. Yes, we have that. Of course, there's like our bullseye target audience. But to be very honest, I'm like, when I think about the way how I work, I really rather think about mindsets.
Yeah.
Mindsets people are in rather than ages people are in. I'm mid-40s and I would be like on the verge of still being in the right target audience. And believe me, I'm the right target audience. So it's really more about interest groups. Yes, I can tell you all these demographics, but I think it wouldn't be as interesting for you as more thinking about the interest bubbles we're talking about. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking into interest bubbles when we communicate. So also when talking about influencer marketing, it is for us very, very important to not only talk to people who are in the interior bubble, but also people who are in the family bubble, in the kitchen bubble, and are interested in a beautiful life in one or the other case where we can be there for them.
Yeah, and you also talked about inclusion and diversity.
Yeah,
it's not often that you in home and living that you have a brand that is heavily pushing this to be more inclusive, and also not trying to shove down a certain ideal of beauty, but like really being it's a two-way street, I think. So how do you work with the ideals of inclusion and diversity in brand?
So for me, it's really, I don't care. Like, we don't care if you have a 10 square meter room in Hanover because you're studying there or whatever, or you have a townhouse in London. Happy for you with your townhouse, happy for you with your beautiful room in Hanover. It's about how you can elevate the space you live in. I think this in itself is inclusive, right? It's just... and we offer from two. You can have a small vase, or you can have a big sofa, or a design couch. So it's really about just not differentiating. And we also show these homes, right? Within our home stories, we have customer home stories that show small homes. And actually, those small homes are what people find most interesting. Like, how can I style a small balcony? How can I style a small living room? Versus then we have these super inspirational homes. That's the townhouse in London. It looks amazing, beautiful. And it also inspires me. It's not my home, but it can inspire me on the other hand.
Yeah, totally. And the fact that at least we in this room, we live in urban areas where your space can be quite limited, doesn't allow it. Still, you can make it beautiful. So it's a fitting concept. But then again, maybe someone could have multiple apartments or houses that they need to fill with furniture, right?
And how interesting is it to furnish a small room versus like this big, huge mansion, right? It's super, super interesting what you can do with small changes to really elevate your home. And I think that's just fascinating.
Lydia, while thinking about this podcast episode, I came across a staggering statistic that 80% of your buyers are repeat customers. And to me, that's very impressive. And looking at the numbers and the growth path of your company, last year you reported, you're a publicly traded company also, you reported 29 million revenue. So it's quite impressive, and all the approach with the brand also translates to business, which is very nice to see. Yeah, can you tell us how if you have a secret sauce for this 80% repeat customer topic?
Yeah, so I mean, we grew out of the club business, as you know, and the club business really was living through daily sales. So a little bit the FOMO thing that people really, were triggered by that. But the business has changed, right? And also the way people shop has changed. So besides obviously amazing products that has people coming back, I circle back to the content piece.
Yeah.
Because it is inspiring. You can go on the site, you will see inspiring images, you will see inspiring content, you will have the best curation. So it's not ongoing the same, but it's a curation from third-party brands and our very own Westwing collection that offers beautiful products combined with home stories, combined with influencer shop the looks, combined with all of this. So this is where we pay so much attention to every single detail on site in our social channels and with this content creation that keeps people coming back, because they will never be bored. Come back tomorrow, you will see something else. Come back tomorrow, you will have another inspiration. So I think that's the secret sauce.
In one of the conversations recently, we also talked a lot about trust. And these days, the consumer, the people that they trust is different than, let's say, 20, 30 years ago. We tend to trust strangers much more. And I know also you are the brand that has most mentions among creators. I was also very surprised to see that. So people trust these creators and influencers that talk about you and talk about your brand. Can you tell us about your strategy working with these creators? Because you also have a very important role.
Yeah, the creators and influencers play a crucial role. And for me, in the last years, it has really been more about community building than about working with creators. So the people we work with and the people that we work with very successfully are people that we have built relationships over a long period of time. They are people that love the brand. I can count on one hand and all the time the creators we've worked with that we only booked because they were big names on one hand, and we work with creators on a daily basis because we love to work with people that love our brand and that can authentically talk about our brand, because also it's different than in fashion. You don't just send a pair of jeans and then people talk about it. We have quite big things, so a sofa doesn't come to a person just like this. So it's really about people telling our stories authentically from themselves. I have to circle back to the authentic part, because that's, besides the beauty, maybe the most important core of Westwing. It's like authenticity, although it's a very used word, but it's true. People telling our story, and those creators and influencers, really, they are very, it's a close-knit community. They know the team very well. They're in contact with them, their friends. If they, like, we have people that have podcasts, so our team is invited. So it's really, really close community.
Yeah, but working with so many influencers, probably it's also sometimes challenging to make sure that the brand identity is reflected in the right way, that it's of course earned content most of the time, also where you have less control. But do you sometimes face difficulties also with, like, hey, we wanna to what extent do you wanna have, like, your brand identity but control, like having this control over how it's presented to the outside world, you know?
I think it would be a mistake to work with influencers and tell them this is how it needs to look. Because again, authenticity. Obviously, we choose people that create content that we find beautiful or that we find fitting to our brand. But then you take the products, you do you. That's important. So of course, sometimes you see content, especially maybe from smaller creators, where you're like, no, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. The content they create for their followers and not for us. And their followers follow them because they love that content, and we chose them because we love that content. So that's, I think, that's how we do it, and that's why for me, as a lover of aesthetically beautiful things, for me, the selection of those people plays a role. So I look at every profile, be it small or big, and I also say no if I think the content produced does not fit our values or does not fit the way that we want to communicate. But as soon as we have that, we let the people produce their content. And we also see that the content that's most authentic performs the best. Most engagement, also converts the best. So that's why we would never restrict the people and say, this is our CI, you please only take pictures or videos in this way.
Working with creators and influencers, do you have top do's and don'ts for us, what you've learned throughout the time that you've worked with them, your best practices, basically?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is what I just said. Make sure to do a selection of people you like and then trust them. Trust them and have them cater to their audience. That's how people would start loving you. That's the first thing, and then the authenticity. Find out what you want to communicate, like what's the core of your brand you want to communicate. Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be more luxury? So this is important to know before working with creators. And then obviously also, do you need brand awareness, or do you need a narrative you want to tell? What is it you want to achieve? And I would always say, rather work with more smaller influencers than with those big names. I have to say, from all my experiences at Westwing, but also at Zalando, it's always been the smaller profiles that are authentic that really, really make a difference.
Yeah, maybe the size is less, but the conversions might be a lot higher at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's, again, more authentic. An influencer that's huge, that, is at one luxury brand on the one day and at the other at the next day, and then sitting on your sofa talking about the sofa, it's a bit like, okay. But these smaller profiles have very engaged audiences that really believe what they say, and they believe it for a reason, because it's true. It's not it's obviously also those people get paid for what they do, but they choose also very wisely what they do, and they work with the partners they really want, and that makes a difference.
You also mentioned that you have this premium approach. Why is this important for you and your brand? And was it always the case since the founding in 2011? Has it always been the focus to cater to a premium audience or an audience that prefer premium products? Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Yeah,
so with the founding and with Delia, for sure, it was premium. So Delia has a very premium background, also working for premium magazines, and so it has always been. But I think when you grow organically, as I said, and create so much content without a clear base, things get a little bit blurry from time to time. So it was very important to get this back and to start building on it. So it is super important for us. It is a very important differentiator to a big other big furniture, home and living places,
and like Höfner, IKEA, and stuff like this.
Exactly. And it is also the base for everything we do. And it's not always easy because, as said, if you have so many content by creators and all the channels, you have to look at it very differentiated. So what we do is, on the one hand, we have our campaigns that are clearly premium, taking cues from luxury, taking cues from premium fashion brands, due to a really strong art direction, a really strong art buying. We work with amazing in-house but also external photographers. The way that we light our product, the way that we showcase our product is clearly premium. And to ensure that we don't become too luxury and too distant, we differentiate between channels. So whilst having this premium approach, when we have our campaigns, we have a more eye-to-eye approach when talking to influencers, or when we have our home stories with our customers, much more eye-to-eye. So to balance this between channels just plays a major role for our communication, the right orchestration.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, especially what you said about talking to influencers on eye level, and you made some references about their size. Smaller influencers might even be better. So what about, so when you think about all the channels, could you guide us through which channels you're most successful in? Maybe let's talk about, like, obviously I can imagine 2 candidates for these channels, but I want to hear it from you, especially where you work with the influencers, where you see much business generated.
So when we talk about social media, it's clearly Instagram and TikTok. So we have 8.6 million followers on Instagram, which is a huge follower base. And there we find a super interesting and super engaged audience. Like people really love what we do, and we quietly we differentiate between TikTok that we play content that we play on TikTok and content that we play on Instagram. Not all, some we also play on both sides. So this is our main content source, where we have this more authentic content. Not only, so again here, a clear orchestration of premium brand content coming from us, from a more production value content, I would say. Not the best performing content, obviously, in the classic sense. So not the content where you get all the engagement, the comments, the likes, and so on. That's just the nature of things. But still, it's super important to us to convey this premium expertise. And on the other hand, we have content that's produced by our social team that's super fun, that's engaging, that's more native, and that's the combination of those both things. That's really what makes the difference.
While you're talking about all this, I see how your eyes are shining. Like, you're really, you work for a love brand and you love what you do. To me, that's such a luxurious position to be in. And so I think looking at the market, we have the chance to talk to many different types of brands and from different segments of e-commerce. And one thing that I've recently came across is when you look at different segments in e-commerce, you see right now in the next few years, grocery will have much more of a growth path. Around 14.5% growth is expected. When you look at home and living, it's supposed to shrink a little bit. It's to me, it's kind of getting a little bit competitive. It's kind of a tough market, and we had Corona, for example. During that time, the consumers were they had an inclination to buy more for home and living because they were obviously at home. They wanted to decorate. When you see something on a daily basis much more than you did before, chances are you want to change it or make it more beautiful, like you said before. So what's your perception about the company's future in terms of how the next years will develop? Do you have certain plans that you can already tease a little bit to make sure that the company is on the right track?
So I think it's important to stay awake and to change things and to rattle things up from time to time. And so it's going to be exciting years that are ahead of us, and we're going to stay awake, and we're going to keep on growing of what we have been building right now.
You're in 12 markets as far as I know, right?
Exactly.
Which areas in Europe are you active in sales?
So it's 12 markets.
Yeah.
So it's Germany, it's Italy, it's Poland, it's the Netherlands. So you name it.
Brand identity in different local situations also requires a lot of attention, I believe. The chances are in Germany, the topic of diversity is probably much more in the focus, but in some other market, it might not be the case. How's your approach? Do you have one size fits all in terms of like your values, what you push in all these markets, or do you have also some local intricacies that you take into consideration in the creatives or in your approach working with creators?
Yeah, so for sure. So the maxim is always as global as possible, as local as needed. So yes, and that's why it has been so important to build this brand foundation. So this is there. Our values are there. We won't have you will not see a completely different Westwing in Poland than you see it in Germany or in the DACH region. But there are local nuances, and these local nuances we are very aware of, and we also make sure to know them, and that's how we differentiate within the markets. When you have such a strong core, it's possible. You're still the same brand. You just you make sure that you cater the audience and that you speak to the audience in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah, working with brands so many years. What were your top 3 challenges that you had?
So I would say, number 1, as a creative, it's always difficult to prove the impact of the work you have and to explain the impact of the work you have. So this has been like a constant, and I'm sure it will be until I stop working with 88. You constantly have to explain why it makes a difference. So this has been my number 1 challenge, I would say. But I was super lucky to very often, not always, but very often have been working with organizations that value creative. So starting with Diesel, creative at its core. And also now at Westwing, there's a big value for creatives. Still, you have to explain. So that's the number 1 top challenge. And to have, I would also say, to have a long breath. Do you say that in English?
Lange Atem.
Lang Atem is also, things won't change within a season and also not within a year. It will take time until people get it. And I think that's really, really great at Westwing right now, that we see that we make the difference. If we see a struggling market, we do see that what we have been doing in the last 2 years makes a difference. And I'm very happy to work for an organization where this is valued and seen, and where there's also the Lange Atem to believe, okay, we continue and we believe that we will see the fruits of this. And I'm 100% sure that, and we already see the fruits, and I see it even growing more because the organization believes in it. And if I look around other brands that I admire, they're always deeply rooted in believing in good execution and believing in good storytelling. So it's a struggle, it's a challenge, but challenge accepted. And if you're out there, stick with it. Stick with it. It will pay off.
Totally. And I see this everywhere, actually. I mean, going beyond brand, just look at the most successful companies in the world. just like a company like SpaceX, how many failed rocket launch attempts they had, and they just kept going, how many companies just kept failing. And Mark Randolph, before he founded Netflix, how many failed ideas he had. And just I think the stamina that you mentioned, langen Atem zu haben, it's super important to believe in something and to believe that the dots will connect. I think makes a huge difference.
Yes, and believe, and also a challenge is especially if you're working in like startups or organizations that have more like business background. To the challenge is sometimes, to have the right arguments, and because it's always easier to look at numbers than to believe into a vision, because a vision, there's no numbers. It's just, I believe it's going to be super nice. And then someone calls it, look at these numbers. The numbers don't look good. And if you do this and this and times this and you cross away all the marketing, then the numbers will look much better. And in the short term, this might be true. And so I think like really having the boldness and the braveness of believing that a vision can come true, I think that's also super important.
That's getting, I think I have the feeling that it's getting 2024 towards the end. We are seeing a kind of a better outlook in e-commerce, but times have been challenging also, where administrators or managers in these companies had to look at efficiencies and profitability and all these, like number focus was much more in your face than the years before that. But as I said, like it has to be, there's like from a brand perspective, the way I understand you is like stand your ground and believe in what you're planning for the future. But also from the other side, it has to have some support.
Totally, it has, and of course you need to be able to understand this, and you need to be able to work efficiently. It's two parts, two sides of the story, but you can't just have the one or just have the other. It needs to work together jointly.
I think you sitting in front of me, you're also a huge inspiration to many e-commerce companies that have an innovative idea, that have a product that they want to really make successful. We had Miss Sophie in the podcast. I don't know if you know the brand, but it's a founder-owned and then successful exit story. She was really telling me, hey, Efe, like when all of my friends, consultants at companies like McKinsey, and they were already having great salaries, and we just had a tiny apartment, and we were pushing, like my husband was helping with the packages, and like all these years I didn't pay myself a salary for 4 years, and then now you see that she's done the successful exit, and so these business stories all around are super inspiring. Do you have some concrete advice for e-commerce entrepreneurs out there to have lasting success?
Well, that's obviously it's difficult to say, because it's really very much depending on your business, and the businesses are so different. But I would say trust your guts. It's your business. You founded it. Do what you think is the best thing. I see so many startups I'm getting targeted on Instagram, and I have the feeling they have this book, or they ask ChatGPT, and then it's like, okay, you need to do this and that on Instagram, so the algorithm, and then they do it. I see it all. They all do the same. It's like checking off 1, 2, 3, 4, how to build a startup and how to make a startup relevant. And I think that's wrong. I think really believe in, your product, what's best for your product, and if it's what stands in those books, then fine, fair enough. But if it's not, then do something else. And if it's creating content like it is for Westwing at the very core, then you see it's successful, because people get, coming back to the authenticity, people get that it's at the core. If it's not creating content, if it's not even doing social media, maybe, then that's your way. Just believe what's best for your brand and then do that, and people will get it.
That's a perfect way to end the conversation, I believe. Thank you so much for your time and the insights that and your personal experiences you shared. You highlighted authenticity quite a few times. I think that we can give that as a key takeaway. Be authentic, believe in what you do. And also how, to me, the most important part is how all that you do, how that translates to lasting business success. And we will be watching you closely in the future endeavors. Thank you so much again. See you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the EGN Podcast. If you found our discussion insightful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Your support helps us grow and improve our content. See you next time.